Hey, AP Psychology, welcome to the lecture on trait theory. This is great fun to look at all these different traits and to decide whether, traits we're born with stay with us throughout our entire lifetime or if they sort of morph and change over the lifespan. Just a fascinating way to analyze personality. Now, we're going to start with your basic idea of what a trait is. So, a trait is a characteristic pattern of behavior or disposition to feel and act as assessed by yourself, the person himself, in self report inventories or anecdotal evidence, and then peer reports. So, if you were to take like a personality test in your latest, issue of Cosmo, things like that, or you to take the Myers Briggs leadership assessment, all these different pieces add up to inventories and reports on what is trait. Some technical difficulties here. Okay, so Eisnick and Eisnick concluded that there was something called a trait factor analysis. And this involved looking at a variety of a scale that spoke about four different traits that we have. And really, it was two different scales. So there's extroversion and introversion, so whether you're outgoing or not outgoing. And then there's emotional stability versus emotional instability. And they created a questionnaire that helped them come up with, where you fall on this spectrum. So this is what it looks like. Now you've got unstable and stable at the top and bottom. And then from side to side, you've got the introverted and the extroverted traits. And we all sort of fall somewhere in between on the scale. So as you can see, an unstable or, again with this, an unstable or introverted person could be anywhere between being very quiet all the way up through moody and all these other different ideas, traits. And then if you go to the other side, you could look at unstable versus extroverted, and they would fall somewhere within that analysis of it. So we're on sort of this spectrum of these X and Y axes, which is fascinating stuff. Here we go again. This. Okay. Just be patient, please. I'm trying to do this. Okay. So the other piece that plays a role in our personality is biology. Now, we have seen through brain scans and genetic analysis that our personality definitely has, biology definitely has a role within personality. So, for example, in brain scans, when shown certain things or asked to talk about certain things, different areas of a person's brain is aroused, is awakened, is active on these brain scans. The same thing with genetics, that you definitely have an element of heredity when it comes to your autonomic nervous system and how it reacts. Remember, your autonomic nervous system is all about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and that's part of our personality. If you, according to trait analysis, if you are someone who is really sort of jumpy and out there, your autonomic nervous system might be sort of in overdrive, and that could be as a result of genetics. So these are all aspects that they take into consideration. So one of the other major ideas under trait theory is this idea of what's called the Big Five. Sometimes it's called the Big Five analysis, the Big Five traits. But whenever you see the Big Five, it's talking about the idea of traits. And that we have these five different traits, and we're all have an element of each along some spectrum. So the five traits are conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion. Now, many of these you probably already know what they mean, but let's go through them fairly quickly. So conscientiousness is just that, how conscientious you are. How much do you take care of business, and how quickly do you do that? Agreeableness is your ability to be sort of open to different things, open to, new ideas, open to trying out, different various things in different situations. How agreeable are you? Your neuroticism has to do with your emotional stability or your emotional instability. Openness is a little bit different from agreeableness in that it's talking about your ability to sort of be out there, to be a little bit more outgoing, and to sort of be able to take in what other people are saying and doing. And lastly, extroversion is strictly how outgoing or introverted you are. So we're all on a basis of these five. Oh, here we go. We're reloading. Here we go. Here are all of the uh, big five. And a great way to remember the big five is through the acronym CANOE. You can also switch the words around and it also spells ocean. But the word canoe is what this PowerPoint in the book and in the book talks about. So again, here you go. If you're conscientious, you're either on one side of the spectrum, disorganized, careless, and impulsive, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you are organized, careful, and disciplined. So how conscientious are you? Again, with your agreeableness, on the one side, you are ruthless, suspicious, uncooperative with people. Then on the other end of the spectrum, if you are super agreeable, you are soft-hearted, trusting, and helpful. Then we come to neuroticism. This is your emotional stability. On one side of the spectrum, you are calm, secure, self-satisfied, relaxed. On the other end of the spectrum is this idea that you are anxious, insecure, and really self-pitying. Moving on to openness, how practical you are. On one end of the spectrum, you prefer routine, you conform to what the group is doing, versus super open, where you are imaginative, you like variety, you are independent. And then lastly, we look at extroversion, how outgoing you are. And on one end of that, you are not that outgoing. You are what they call retiring, meaning that you're sort of to yourself. Sobering, meaning that you're not that out there with people. You tend to talk about, when you do talk, sort of the downside of things, and you are reserved, where you hold back on your personality. On the other end of that is the sociable, fun-loving, and affectionate person on this end of the extroverted piece. So once again, to help you remember this, you can use the acronym CANOE: conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion. So the factor analysis and then the big five personality factors are the way that we look at trait theory. One thing that is vitally important to keep in mind, that trait theory is great at describing behavior, but does not do a good job in explaining behavior. And sometimes psychologists and people who are analyzing personality like to have the why, the explanation of why a person's personality is the way it is. This is just a great way to describe it. So in the next lecture, we will take a look at the humanistic aspect or perspective of analyzing personality. Until next time.